Good morning, everyone. Here we are again, another Tuesday morning. That means another episode of Tooth Teacher Tuesday. Dr. Z here, and today talking about a topic that is another very common question I receive, and a little bit of setup for this question. So, in the unfortunate event that I see a patient that has a tooth that's become infected for any number of reasons. Typically, the discussion is, okay, sir or ma'am, your tooth is infected, so the permanent treatment for this tooth is going to remove the infection either by saving the tooth with a root canal, if possible, or removing the infection by removing the tooth itself and the infection with it, which means extracting the tooth. So infected tooth treatment options are usually root canal or extraction, which we've talked about in the past. But a lot of times a common question that follows that discussion is something along the lines of, okay, doc, you've told me my tooth's infected. Why can't I just be put on an antibiotic? Won't the infection go away and then we don't have to treat the tooth? And it's a fair question. And to kind of dive into the nuances of that question, the simple answer is no. An antibiotic is just kind of a temporary fix. I like to say it's kind of like trying to put a Band-Aid on a giant wound. It's not going to do much. The reason for that being is when a tooth's become infected, it is, for whatever reason has caused the infection, it's not something that's solely going to respond to an antibiotic. And while, yes, it is true that in the event of severe infections, a lot of times we will treat the infection with an antibiotic to make patients comfortable, that is just a temporary fix, like I said. The problem with infected teeth is that these infections recur once the antibiotic is out of your system. And, it's not always an immediate recurrence, but sooner or later, that infected tooth is going to have the infection flare back up, sometimes with, comes back with a vengeance. And so, again, while we would treat an infection with an antibiotic for short-term treatment, it's not a long-term option. The only long-term options are going to be either the extraction or the root canal. And that also sometimes brings up the question of, well, why can't just when the infection comes back, why can't we just do another round of antibiotics and just keep masking that infection on again, off again with antibiotics, for the foreseeable future? And the reason for that is, it's certainly something we could do, but it's not in anyone's best interest to do that. And what I mean by that is every time we treat an infection with an antibiotic, there is a small but still legitimate chance that not all the bacteria will be eliminated with that infection, and those that aren't eliminated end up developing a resistance to antibiotics. And over time, as more and more bacteria become antibiotic resistant, we run into a problem where, now we can't even treat them with the antibiotic. They're all resistant. And, the perfect example of that is anyone that's experienced a MRSA infection. That's an example of a bacterial infection where the bacteria are highly resistant to antibiotics, and then it's very aggressive treatment to treat MRSA. And that's what we're trying to avoid, is just this constant cycle of antibiotics that are going to continually increase your likelihood of developing antibiotic resistance that when you get into a situation where you really need antibiotics, may not even be for dental reasons. It could be an infection elsewhere. And now you're resistant. Now we're really up the creek. And so that's why, in good consciousness, your dentist won't, or at least shouldn't, be just constantly treating infection with antibiotics. It's looking out for your overall long-term health to hopefully avoid you running into an antibiotic-resistant infection. So that's the long answer to why we don't just constantly treat infections with antibiotics. And I hope that makes sense and kind of clears up why that is kind of the standard of care when it comes to antibiotics. It's not because we as your dentists are holding out and not wanting to prescribe the antibiotic. It's wanting to, again, look out for your best interest. So hope that makes sense. Hope that clears up some misconceptions. And as always, if you have any thoughts or comments or suggestions, please let me know. But otherwise, thank you for your time and attention, and I hope you will tune in to next week's episode. Until then, have a great week, everyone.